Welcome back to the Jason Rant Show. Thank you so much for tuning in to Seattle Red 770 AM online, both video, audio, live, and podcast form at seattlered.com and the Seattle Red app. King 5's latest investigation into ICE is not journalism. It almost is never journalism. King 5 is the resistance network. It is a political press release dressed up as reporting. And it's yet another example of activist Seattle media pretending to hold power accountable while doing very little more than defending illegal immigrants and smearing federal law enforcement officials. And this report from King 5 that came out recently, just listen to how Joyce Taylor introduced the story.
Tonight, a King 5 investigation has led to the state of Washington admitting it unwittingly allowed ICE to hunt down and arrest undocumented residents with the help of state data. That is against the law.
Now, it's funny because I can argue that the language hunt down is both offensive to the ICE agents, but also the illegal immigrants you're calling animals. Although in some cases, they are animals because they're talking about criminal illegal immigrants who have committed serious crimes. That's who ICE is going after. But the language, ICE hunts people down. Now, is that intended to smear federal law enforcement? Yes, 100%. And it's meant to prop up illegal immigrants as victims who are being hunted by these evil, evil, evil fascists in the White House. Now, the reporter in question here is Kristen Goodwillie, or Goodwiley. I recognize the name. What's that mean?
It's not good.
No, it's not. Now, this is a follow-up to a story we've covered before, that ICE and the federal government in general was using access to the Department of Licensing of Washington State's database to be able to track down individuals who are criminal illegal immigrants. Now, they didn't use it just to go after people with brown-sounding last names, okay? So Espinoza, let's go after this guy. Because if they did that, we would see way more arrests, but arrests are actually going down again. They were using this very specifically to target individuals for a variety of reasons, including not just their criminal history, but they might have already been ordered to be deported and then didn't actually leave the country. And this had been going on for a long time. Washington is a sanctuary state. So keep in mind, the reckless decision to hand out driver's licenses to illegal immigrants is precisely why the federal government has an interest in looking at the Department of Licensing database. This was brought on the state of Washington by Democrats who allowed for this to happen. And I have to assume they didn't think ICE would just ignore the access that they got via a contract. They maybe for 4 years under Joe Biden, they assumed it would just be ignored. Maybe. I guess I understand that. But why wouldn't the Trump administration start utilizing this? And King 5 in this report pretends this is some sort of breach of rights. It's not a breach of rights. Washington set the table and ICE is eating the dinner. That's really what this is about. Now, the report highlights the case of a guy named Wilmer. They won't give us his last name because he's an illegal immigrant. And then we might actually be able to Google who they're talking about and get additional information so that we know why they're being targeted. But I'm told this person has no criminal record at all.
King 5 uncovered multiple cases where this form of data sharing led to the arrest with the purpose of deportation. The most clear case is this one. Federal agents detained an undocumented man named Wilmer with no criminal record in Kirkland.
And it doesn't go beyond that, which is odd. Because if you're a serious journalist, what would be a follow-up question in this case?
What was the motive for detaining him?
Why'd they do that? The guy has no. Now, do we all acknowledge there are tens of thousands, if not maybe 200,000 or so? I can't remember what the final number was. Illegal immigrants in the state, right? A ton. Okay. Why this one? How did he come to their attention at all? It wasn't just based on the name. So why this guy? You don't get an answer. You don't get an answer, including to the question, well, has he been accused of a crime and just hasn't been adjudicated yet? If you're accused of murder and charged of murder, you don't have a criminal history. Not until you're found guilty. So again, why did this guy get their attention? They're not interested in answering that question over at King 5. And by leaving that question, all of these unanswered questions, the way that they are left, the story is intended to manipulate you into believing that ICE is randomly targeting people who are completely harmless. Poor Wilmer. Poor Wilmer. Now, that's, of course, dishonest. What they're doing is dishonest. Either King 5 didn't bother to dig a little bit deeper, or worse, they intentionally withheld it because it undermined the narrative that they set out to put into this report. This report declares the practice illegal to share this information under the Keep Washington Working Act, which is our sanctuary state, our dubiously titled sanctuary state law. But it's funny because even though the report itself deems what happened to be illegal, they spoke to Rebecca Saldana, the state senator from Seattle who authored the bill. And I'm going to read to you her quote in this piece. If it's criminal activity, then they should be able to do it through the warrant process. It's against the spirit of the law. Okay, now that's a lot different than it's against the law, right? It's against the spirit of the law. The law was not intended for this to happen. Okay, and by the way, I believe that. The law probably wasn't intended for that. Is it against the law? It's against the spirit. Okay, so then it's not against the law. And yet King 5 entirely framed this story around an illegal act or an act that was in violation of the Keep Washington Working Act. And yet they undermined their own argument by including the bill's author who says, okay, no, it's not against the law, but it's either we don't like it to happen. Okay, well, that kind of sounds like you screwed up then. And they took advantage of a loophole that you didn't intend. Okay, yeah, womp womp. But it's not illegal. And yet, again, it didn't stop King 5 from pretending that it was illegal. This is not watchdog reporting, but it's dressed up as that. This is resistance political theater. And that's what King 5 is really, really good at. They couldn't have scripted better, right? ICE is evil. All immigrants are victims. Washington's sanctuary laws are holy writ. You do not interfere with them. And they don't acknowledge once in this story that immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility and that states don't get to obstruct that as much as they may want to. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. You're treated to this moral lecture from King 5 of all places. A news organization that is light on news. And they've got one of these stories up, it feels almost daily, right? It's like almost every other day you get one of these stories at any given moment. Any given moment. You go to their website, because God forbid you actually watch their stuff. Please don't. Unless you truly hate yourself and you're trying to atone for sins, okay, fine. You can go ahead and watch. Don't ever watch King 5 News. But if you ever go to their website, you'll always find these kinds of stories. And they're always framed exactly the same way. Not once can they just come out and say, yeah, this guy deserved to be deported, especially because a judge ordered him to be deported.
I did go to the YouTube page of this video, though, just for fun, and they just got ripped in the comments.
Did they? Good. I'm glad you told me that, because I didn't go to their YouTube page. I only go to the Seattle Red YouTube page and Vegas Matt, because I like to watch him gamble. But those are the only two, and Dave Asprey. I like that stuff. But other than that, just Seattle Red on YouTube. But I'm glad other people are recognizing this.
One person said we should deport King 5.
But every time I do stories like this, or I see the number of reports I see that I think are irresponsibly partisan. And I'm more upset with partisan hackery that pretends to be actual straight down the middle news. If you want to come, do you ever hear me upset that MSNBC took a progressive tone on something?
No, I mean, we'll say it's their point of view is stupid.
We'll call
but
out the position and say, well, this is not argued well. But I'm never out here saying I am outraged. MSNBC completely partisan to the left. That so irresponsible. No, because they own that space. They don't hide it. King 5 tries to hide it. Certain reporters over at Como try to hide it. Same with Fox 13 and Cairo. Like you have people who I think do really good work across all of the networks, including King 5. I'm sure I can, gun to my head, I'll probably die. But if given a few days, I'll probably figure out someone I like at King. No, there's some people I like at King 5, and I think they do at least inoffensive work. But as a brand, King 5 just leans into this stuff, and I always wonder if people are attuned to it. And so it brings me what I don't normally have this feeling, so I'm assuming it's great joy to know that people are calling it out on the YouTube page. That makes me feel better. I hope more people are like that and attuned to this kind of stuff. And I imagine that, especially going like King 5 on YouTube, you're going there specifically as a viewer, right? And if you're even turned off by this kind of stuff, you're like, okay, geez, come on, man, let's dial this down a notch. Can we at least acknowledge that we should be going? It's so funny in these conversations, you really don't hear much at all from folks who will at least acknowledge there are some people that they would like to see deported. It's just an all or nothing. They either want no one deported or everyone deported, depending on who you're talking to sometimes. There's some nuance here, and it's okay to live in that world. I live in that world all the time. Like, I'm handsome, but I'm also standoffish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Don't hit on. This is weird. It's a weird thing to about. 1-800-465-8770 if you want to send me a text. Every single Thursday, we post our Jason Rantz Show video update. It's brought to you by your local tax expert and advocate, Greg Nunn of None Better Tax Resolution. This time, yours truly was criticized by a columnist who just refuses to retire. He's like 93 years old, Joel Connolly, formerly of the Seattle PI. Remember that? Grag? Well, he's still doing something for a pollster blog, and he called me a liar for saying that downtown Seattle and Belltown is a hellhole. Apparently, I'm making it all up. So today's monologue was actually really easy. I was just like, look at all these videos and photos I took over the course of the last week. All in downtown Seattle and Belltown. Please tell me, you dude who doesn't even live in Seattle, who's being honest here. You can check it out on our social media channels. You're listening to The Jason Rantz Show.